Hello, everybody, and welcome to a chat between Acquia's professional services team. That would be me. I'm Mike Madison, and Tim Jacobs, who is a senior director of web development at SAP Concur. Hello, Tim. How are you doing today?
Hey, great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for being here. During our overview today, we're going to chat just a little bit about your experience with Acquia, if that's okay. So, for those of you watching who aren't familiar with SAP Concur, they're an organization that helps with expenses, billing, travel reservations, etc. And they were actually founded back in the 90s in 1993, and they're headquartered in Bellevue, Washington. Their technology stack is primarily Drupal 7 multi-site today, but as I understand it, you all are currently migrating over to Drupal 9. Is that going on today? Is that still in progress?
Yep, that's happening currently. Um, that is actively happening. We have two environments that we're setting up. We have Acquia Cloud and Site Factory, and we're in the middle of the migration. Yep.
Oh wow, okay. It sounds like a big project. Um, what inspired you to sort of get started in the first place and migrate SAP onto the Acquia platform? I mean, obviously, it sounds like you're in the middle of another migration going from 7 to 9, but what got you into the Acquia platform in the first place?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've been using Drupal for a long time. We've been using Drupal since Drupal 5. We went to Drupal 6, and then we were on Drupal 7, and that was all in-house hosted. And as the business continued to evolve and go from 5, 6 sites, we found that it was particularly difficult to manage those in-house with resources and continue to be considerably expensive and a heavy burden on our team to patch a lot of the servers and keep things up to date. And ultimately, we started having a conversation about how we could offset some of that work and continue to still streamline some of the development work where we really wanted to focus, right? We wanted to not have all of this technical debt with patching and updating, ensuring we were compliant. And so we looked for a solution, and Acquia Cloud ultimately was the solution we chose to move over to offset all of that back end work. I think there were something like 800 tickets that we had that were offset by moving over to the Acquia Cloud alone.
You're not the first customer, the first organization I've heard talk about. Um, that sort of scaling issue with multi-site. It's a pretty common issue. I'm curious if you don't mind saying how many sites do you have today? Just a ballpark.
We have 32 Concur based sites right now. Yep.
Okay, so you've continued to grow even more from that 5 to 6. So
Yeah,
I imagine those
absolutely. Yeah.
challenges would have gotten even more significant as time went on. Do you have a feel for what types of impacts some of those challenges were having on your ability to do some of those things you were talking about, right? Like really focusing your team on development and features and things like that. I mean, were there any real obvious pain points that you feel like you weren't getting to you know, take advantage of because of all that maintenance?
Absolutely. So our work cycle is quick. We have weekly sprints, weekly releases, and 2 week sprints. And so anything that interrupts that work for having to do a security patch or vulnerability or anything, and anyone who knows managing servers, those things come in sideways. You can prepare a lot for them and schedule them, but there's some that you just can't. And
Right.
not having a whole lot of visibility into that or getting a security notification really kind of interrupted the flow that we had. And by removing that portion of work from our team and having Acquia provide that service for us, and then providing a great way for notification for us and saying, hey, these oftentimes before we would have known otherwise, we were able to kind of remediate that quickly, make sure that we push the patches out, and it has allowed for our team to focus on the core work that they should be focusing on rather than having to uh, pivot and do patching or updates and the like.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is really refreshing to hear you say is that you all were being disrupted by updates, and I'm not glad you were being disrupted by updates, but the fact that you were being proactive in doing your updates, I think, is good. There are a lot of organizations out in the Drupal community that perhaps don't make that decision. So I'm glad you're in a state today where you can kind of, you know, do both, right? You can stay on top of the updates and the maintenance and make sure you're secure, but you can also, you know, get your features and so on and so forth. Um, let's fast forward to today. Like, how would you say things have improved? How would you say things have changed in your current state, as opposed to where you were, you know, before you joined the Acquia platform?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of stage setting that needs to happen to understand the current environment. So we went from on premise, right? Everything was in house fully, and we maintained the servers that were facilitating, the site. And we migrated to Acquia Cloud, and simultaneously, when we did that, we had an agreement to also spin up Site Factory in parallel. So when we could when we did that, it was for us to parallelly build out the Drupal 9 site with the Acquia cloud site at the same time. So we didn't have any of the technical debt, and we can iterate over time to build out 9. Because as anyone knows, building a new site in a new environment and having to work between two separate environments is a huge piece of work. And we didn't want
Oh
to
yeah, for
start
sure.
just a migration without having a strategy in place. And so we've been slowly building out the features and components for the Drupal 9 site on Site Factory, all while continuing to host the current site on Acquia Cloud. So we've built out content types. We have a bunch of features that are already being built out, and we have a distribution that's there. And so that's really given us an advantage, so we can have people look at the features that we're building out, take advantage of them. We actually have one site that's already on Drupal 9 right now in Site
Awesome.
Factory that's being leveraged for kind of a sample site, and we plan on migrating all the rest of the sites with the basis of what we've built in 2022.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Before we move into some other topics, are there any maybe lessons, hard lessons, just normal day in day out lessons that you think would be interesting to this group that, you know, maybe you'd recommend to other folks that are either thinking about joining Site Factory or already running sites on Site Factory?
I think one of the biggest things we would want to make sure we would do again is just coming out with a migration plan, right? You don't want to just jump right into a migration. There's planning for how the content migration is going to map. You should have a clear workflow of how you're going to take advantage of what differences there are in 7 to 9, and really educate yourself on all the new features that 9 gives you and some of the parallels, and where you can take advantage of them, make sure you do, and then where the difference is, educate yourself so you can ensure the migration goes smoothly and you're not stuck in this place of trying to solve for something you weren't prepared for because you weren't aware of the differences there, right? I
Yeah.
would say those are some of the things where we leaned into a lot of the documentation post when we could have done it a little bit earlier.
Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. And I think, you know, as part of our professional services team, a lot of what we see uh, is exactly that, right? We see a real focus on the technical piece, because that can frequently be the exciting part. That can be the, oh, we just want to get in there and start figuring it out, and it's going to be, you know, exciting. But you know, frequently, if you look, or if you leap before you look, you know, you can run into a lot of rework, or perhaps even work in the wrong direction if you don't have a solid plan. um, I think Concur had a chance to work with our professional services team. Is there any part of that process you'd like to share with our audience here today?
Yeah, we've actually worked with the professional services a few times. Um, One was just to kind of get the base distribution set up to kind of uh, replicate some of the features and content types that we had in 7 and build it out in 9 for when we were ready to migrate all of the sites over to Drupal 9. So we had a resource center content type of migrated. It's not really a migration, it was rebuilt. Right, it looks very similar, but the backend is taking advantage of all of the Drupal 9 features. We had some in-house entity bundles that we wrote, which was a custom feature using a module called startup layout, and we transferred that logic into paragraphs, so we can use paragraphs in D9 now. So we're not using a kind of custom solution that we wrote and only dependent on ourselves. Now we're using a well-documented kind of best practice feature in Drupal 9, which removes some of that dependency, right? Only our team can update it, but now we can go out and kind of ask our TAM team and make sure that we're using kind of best practice Drupal, which has been great. And that was one of our first pieces of work. The second piece of work, which we're probably 95% done now, is actually taking a React-based tools framework that we wrote to allow for ROI calculators, expense policy generators. That was very complicated, and take that logic, presented it to the Acquia team to help look at a solution that Drupal could solve, and ultimately came to a conclusion that web form module was actually going to be able to do this and streamline the entire process.
Oh,
Not
awesome.
only is it going to be able to solve the current problem of our existing tools that were relatively static and rigid, but it was going to allow for net new tools to be replicated in the same framework that was built, with all tying back to the web form module, which was absolutely a huge win, because the tools are very effective and efficient, but the replication process was extremely difficult. And so that was the problem we posed. And the PS team was able to work with us to solve for that, and we're right at the end. We have built out the existing tools. We're reviewing how we are generating new tools, and we should be able to sign off before the end of the year with completion. We're really excited for that because it's a huge
Yeah,
driver
that sounds
for
cool.
um, the market. Yep.
So is your team currently, so you're doing development on new features that sort of blend web form and React, and you're tackling a Drupal 7 to Drupal 9 migration sort of simultaneously. Is that right?
That's exactly right. And there's advantages to that, right? Like, a huge lift and shift is really hard for any business to do, because you essentially have to black out. You plan these things, but doing feature by feature, we essentially are taking advantage of both worlds. We're offsetting the back end, right? So the 800 tickets we have gone away to allow for us to take advantage of Acquia Cloud just from the hosting provisioning side and server patching to push them directly, all while taking advantage of the D9 environment for features. So once this tool is built, we're actually taking advantage of Akamai to point the host so the actual user doesn't know. And so we're going to have people running on 7 and 9 at the same time, but they'll never know
Oh, wow.
because we're
They won't
doing
know it.
some, yeah, behind the scenes
That's
pointing,
awesome.
right? And that's ultimately what it's going to be. Where as we continue to build those features out, we're going to continue to point them until we're fully up and running on Site Factory.
Well, Tim, we're almost out of time, unfortunately. Just in our last minute here, so can you maybe talk a little bit about what the future holds for your team?
Absolutely. So we are all fully ramping on D9, and the plan for us to get fully migrated can't come soon enough. We have a lot of work to do in front of us, but we have a great charter for continuing to migrate those content types and sites over. So the first one to go is our newsroom. So we're building out the blog, and we call our blog, which is a press resource site, um, our newsroom. That is actually in-house, built in React, and that's one of the first features that's going to come over possibly by the end of the year. And then we're going to slowly build out all of the other features in 2022, and hopefully have the full 32 sites on D9 by the end of
Very
next
cool.
year.
Very
Yep.
cool. Well, Tim, I really appreciate you taking time to chat with me and our audience today. Good luck in your migration. Sounds like Concur has some really exciting things coming over the next year.
Thanks. Appreciate the time.